That's right. Can I start? Okay. There we go. We got all kinds of new gadgets that we're working with. Okay, awesome. Good morning. Thanks for joining me. Oh, so give me just a few, like if I just stop talking in the middle, it's because I'm admitting people in to the room. So I'm not going psycho or like dropping off dead or anything like that. Okay.
What data processor training is this?
I think this is 3, even though I said 2.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think we're day 3. So last time we just did a real like 30,000 foot view of kind of like the overall process from a really high level overview. We talked about some of the physical things you would need in order to do this job. Okay. So today we're gonna, and what I told you guys at the end of last time is we're gonna jump into more of the how and why, or the how and where and what. So really jumping into, and really also giving you some tips. Oh my God, this is how today's gonna go. Tips and tricks of the trade. And a real high level overview of workflow or kind of standard operating procedure. We're gonna talk about some of the things that people didn't tell me that I just kind of learned through experience. So before I became originator, I was actually a processor. I would process about 32 loans a month. So I learned a lot of that the hard way, and kind of just because, not kind of, I told myself I was gonna get that out of my vocabulary. With my background in corporate training, the way that I learn things is always from the bottom up. And so for my staff, I've told you guys a couple of times before that, when I think about training people, I think about, if you've ever done that class, it's usually done in public speaking, where they make you write the directions for making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And you have to be as detail oriented as you can. And then you have a student or 2 get up and make the peanut butter and jelly sandwich as you read your instructions. And it's hysterical. It's so funny because you don't think of things like, now get the peanut butter and put it on the bread. And sometimes you'll have somebody like holding the knife and they reach in and get peanut butter and put it on the bread, or someone will take the jar of peanut butter and put it on the bread, right? Because without specific instructions, it's left for interpretation. And so when I became a corporate trainer, those were the things that I would think about. And when I worked for this restaurant company and they were doing this certified training program, they wanted to create a standard operating procedure. They were getting ready to franchise. And so they really needed to document how they were running this business and why it was doing so well. Our company had one of the lowest attrition rates, which is turnover in employees. We had one of the lowest attrition rates in our business industry, and people were wanting to know why. So I remember one day they were handing me this training manual, and I'd become quite proficient at this restaurant. I had been there, the 2 restaurants before, I had been a corporate trainer. So basically you learn the process so well that they want you to train other people how to do it. And so they handed me this manual, and all I could think was like, oh dear God, this is like the peanut butter and jelly experiment in high school. No, this is all wrong. Like, you have to put more detail into it. But I'm going through some of these things for you guys. I'm trying to break it down, and we're gonna land the plane, right? So we were at a really high, like the pilot just came on and said, flight attendants prepare for landing. And then they get on and say, hey, we're getting ready to begin our descent into the city that you're landing in, right? So this is now the beginning of that descent for today's session. So, and I apologize about my ring, and I'm sorry if there's glare there. You're just gonna have to make your screen bigger. Okay, so today, last week we ended with this like a flow chart. We talked about, you have the application, registering a loan where you get a loan number. We talked about how some banks, as soon as you upload, you get a loan number. Other banks have requirements about the data points they require before they issue a loan number. We talked about how this is scrubbing a file. When I first started in the industry, when everything was still paper, we manually scrub the file for the missing data that the computer technology will now do for us, right? You're missing the state, your declarations aren't complete. So that's why you don't really hear the terminology like a scrubber anymore, because technology has now taken over that for us. But we walked through last time, we tried to register that same 3.2 in I think 2 or 3 different banks, and we looked at how the different banks triggered us about the missing information that we needed. Some of the banks let us register, go ahead and register that file. Some of them didn't. Some of them made us go back and get that information and enter it in before we could register the file to obtain that loan number, okay? And we talked about submitting a loan and that goes into underwriting. And then we talked about that this underwriting approval process was a back and forth a few times before you got your close. Okay, and we also talked about the more experience you get as a processor, the more of these responsibilities you can take on. That, you know, this was a handoff spot, this was a handoff spot to processing, and this was a handoff spot to processing. What I learned as a processor, which for those of you that don't know me, I'm now a broker owner. I'm the biggest originator in my company, but I started as a processor. I actually started as, 2005, I started as an originator. And then if you ever work in retail, what we think is an originator is actually a processor because they don't want to license everybody. But anyway, so, oh, let me let somebody in. Somebody's wanting to get in. Okay. Okay, so what I learned when I came over to broker is that every loan officer does their processor does their loan different, depending on how long they've been in the industry, how they learn to be in the industry. So as a processor, you have to be a little bit flexible on where you get a file, where the handoff is from every loan officer. This could be a standard operating procedure by brokerage. So a brokerage might have a very specific standard operating procedure about where this gets handed off. Because I run my brokerage more like a real estate office where every loan officer that works for me is very experienced. They have over 10 years of experience, almost every loan officer. They are kind of already set in their ways and they have a specific way that they do it. I want them to continue running their pipeline the way they run it like their own business. And so we support that by providing processing, but and Isabel can attest that like for different loan officers, they get the file in different places. So she gets the file from me in a very different place than she gets it from 2 of our other loan officers that she processes loans for, okay? What we also talked about is the more of this that you can do, the higher level processor you are and the more money you're able to make, okay? So that being said, today what we're gonna cover is like an overview or a process flow. What documents do I need? What kind of people are gonna be in the transaction? And how do I actually like do this job, right? So I conceptually understand this is what we're doing, but like, how do I do it? My mom was a computer engineer when I was growing up, and it was a very intangible thing. I didn't understand what it meant to go to work because I didn't understand computers. And so for a long time in my life, I chose very tangible jobs to do. I was a server, I worked in retail, I worked jobs where it was a legitimate physical job to do in exchange for income. And so I always approach these things where like, okay, I get it, right? I get it, but how does it work? Like, how does this happen? So that's what we're gonna cover today. And then the next train is really gonna dive into a lot more specifics about different parts of this process. One of the things that I said before last time is that I really think that, well, let me not jump into that. I'll jump into it as it comes up in our timeline here. Okay, so overview of the process, right? The loan officer is going to get an application. The loan needs to be registered, then it needs to be disclosed, and then it needs to be submitted. It's going to go to underwriting. We're going to get an approval or a suspense, but either way, the underwriter is going to review it, and then we're going to go back and forth with the underwriter providing documents until we go to close, okay? Now, I showed you guys last time how registering in different lenders is different, but this is the first part of getting on the bike, okay? In order to do anything else with the loan, we have to get it registered because we need the loan number so that we can do things like ordering title work and insurance and stuff. So this is the first part of the process. We saw how this was different. Now, what I said to you guys last time was, it is my firm belief, and so if you work for a company, you know, you may need to talk with them about this, But it's my firm belief that you really should try and have 3 to 6 months in the industry before you even start doing disclosures. And here's why. Nothing can happen on this loan, right, until this is done, till the disclosures are done. And any lender will not let it go to underwriting until it's disclosed and has been submitted. So if you're a processor and you don't know how to do this, look at how much of this file doesn't even get started until you get past this point. And if this is something you're not familiar with doing and you spend hours, so like Isabel, unmute yourself. How long did you work with me before you disclosed your first loan?
Oh my gosh. Probably like 6 months, if not even more than that. It was recently, like probably about 2 months ago is when I first disclosed my first loan.
And you've been with us about 8 months. So
Yeah.
So even having been and brand new to the industry, you went to 2 trainings at UWM, you did this every day. How long do you think it took you to disclose your first file, even after 6 months in the industry and going to 2 trainings at UWM?
7 months. Like seriously.
But the actual process of doing the disclosure process.
Oh, like putting all the signatures in. And, oh my gosh, dude, that's a process. That's like 30, 40 minutes the first time, if not an hour. I think my first time was probably an hour because I kept missing stuff. There's a lot of signatures in there.
Well, and that is just you sending out the disclosure package that I made for signatures. That wasn't actually even disclosing, okay? So think about the first time you disclosed in UWM. How long do you think that took?
UWM's different, so it was way easier in UWM. You just kind of click a couple buttons and it does it for you.
Okay, but how confident did you feel?
Not at all.
Okay. So my point being, right, is to understand and be able to do the rest of this, because there is so much that happens under disclosing. If you are like a first-time processor, I would not jump into this right away. Now, some of you might not have the choice, and that's okay. And I'll do a class about disclosures. It's probably going to need to be a 2-hour class on how to do this, right? So what I call, and when I hire somebody on who's been with me who doesn't have a lot of experience, I call them a junior processor. I want them to do everything but this, okay? I require my loan officer, or I make them start working with me because I disclose my own loans. I do all the disclosure package, and then I give it to the processor and they send it out in DocuSign for signatures. Okay, and then they're expected to learn, and I teach them how to do the rest of this. Okay. So once it's registered, you have a loan number. Once it's disclosed, the loan needs to be submitted to underwriting. And we talked about how submitting a file. So I remember turning down a job with Cherry Creek Mortgage because she was like, do you know how to submit a file to underwriting? And I was like, I don't know. I think so. I've done loans for 5 years. I think I know what that means, but I don't know. And I turned down a really good job because I was so ego afraid to be like, I mean, I've ridden this bike for 5 years. I'm sure it is, but can you just show me how you guys do it in your system? I did not have the confidence to say that. I've been in it 13 years, and now I have the confidence. And part of it is I want to give you guys the tools to feel confident to ask the questions and let you know that even today, after 13 years, I still call my account executives and I say, hey, can you show me how to do this in your system? I don't say I don't know how to do it. I've been doing loans for 13 years. I know how to ride this bike, but I've never ridden a mongoose bike before. Like, I don't know how hard I need to pedal on a mongoose bike whose tires are this big. Like, really, how hard do I need to push that pedal so I don't fall on my face the first time I push down on the pedal? Like, not trying to make a fool out of myself and be on TikTok or YouTube day one trying to ride a mongoose bike, right? So like, legit, be square with me. How hard do I need to push on this pedal to make this bike with tires this stinking wide go forward, right? So it's not about not knowing how to do this, even if you don't know how to do this. Really, how do I do this in your system, Mr. Account Executive at the bank? that I'm using? How do I do this part in your system? Do you have a webinar that will walk me through how to disclose in your system? Okay. What does it, do you have a, can you walk me step by step through how to submit in your system? And what I will tell you again is that submitting a loan, the idea of it is as simple as uploading a picture in social media. Okay, the bank is the media platform, and the loan file is the picture, and all we're doing is uploading it. Y'all, that was the thing that I could not wrap my brain around, and that I said no to a job for, because I didn't conceptually understand that idea, and it made me feel dumb. And I don't want you guys to feel that way. If you have any sort of experience, you know how to do this. Okay, you just may not understand how to do it in somebody else's system. And then I'm going to show you some other tricks of the trade. Okay, so we've taken the loan officer's taken the loan application. We've got the 1003. They've exported it into the 3.2 file, right? We've saved it in a cloud folder. The loan is now registered. We now have a loan number. Okay. What documents do I need to submit the loan? Every lender is going to have a different requirement on what they will need, but I can tell you the base platform of it is the same. Okay. So you are going to need, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what, let me see. I want to make sure I say this right. It doesn't matter what kind of loan, meaning, right? It doesn't matter what kind of tennis shoe. The example that we had, oh, you guys weren't on that call yesterday. It doesn't matter whether it's conventional VA, USDA, or FHA, right? This is going to be the same. It only matters what type of loan it is. Okay, so you're going to need income docs. You're going to need asset documents. So where's the money coming from to do this transaction? What if the borrower needs money, where is it coming from? We need to know the assets. We're going to need ID, identification. And then as a processor, you need to know if the bank that you are sending it to, or the bank that the loan officer wants it sent it to, do they have a submission sheet? I will tell you that in today's world, there is nothing more annoying to me than the banks that make us fill out a PDF submission sheet. But if that's what they require, that's what they require. And we pull up our sleeves and reheat our coffee and do the submission sheet. Okay. Okay, that's going to be true on any loan. Now, pardon me, I'm real throaty today. I do not have the corona, just allergy season. Calm down. Calm down. Who watches TikTok? Okay. So remember when I said it doesn't matter what kind of loan, just the type of loan? Okay, so every yeah, right? Such an awkward time for allergies. You can't even freaking sneeze nowhere anymore. Okay, so as a processor, you want to make sure you have these, okay? And then you're going to break off. There's going to be some other, if it's a purchase or a refi. So the only time, I'm going to make a blanket statement. The only time you don't need income and assets is if it's a refi that's a streamline. So for all intents and purposes for you guys in here, a VA IRL, so the interest rate reduction loan, it is a no income loan. Okay, it doesn't need income. So if it's a refi and it's a streamline, a VA streamline or an FHA streamline, you don't need these. Any other loan type you do. Okay. Now, if it's a purchase, You're also going to need the contract to submit. On a refi, you don't need anything else. There are a few other things that you should have. You should have a mortgage statement. You should have an HOA statement. So if you are registering a file, and a real quick check would be just look at the housing payment. If there's anything listed under HOA, you'd want to make sure that there's an HOA statement in there. Excuse me. Okay. Now you don't need to have this on a submission, and you probably don't need to hold up a submission for these things. But a loan officer, depending on where you take this over as a processor, like some processors get the loan right here and they're getting all the documentation from the borrower. And I swear to God, this person better be making like $8 or $9 or $100 or $1,000 a file if you're doing all that work. But a loan officer who's working with a client, this, I mean, realistically, this is one of the things that they should be asking for. Okay, it just helps you clean up the approvals that come back from underwriting if you can have this extra paperwork in there. Okay, now, on an FHA loan, you need to request the case number. And I will tell you that that process is as different at every lender as everybody's genetics are different. It's going to be different in every lender. And I will tell you that even today, after 13 years, if we sign up with a new bank, I always have to ask my account executive the first time we do this, like, how do you guys order a case number? Sometimes it's obvious, it's right in their system. There's a button that says case number. Sometimes you got to fill out a form. Sometimes they have it in their website and you can just fill out the information and hit submit. But you got to request a case number like day one. You got to do that. Because if you're a processor and you don't do this and you order an appraisal and it slips through the AMC's cracks that you didn't put in a case number when you ordered it, and the appraiser goes out and they're like, hey, we need the case number. And you're like, oh, I forgot to order that. It could invalidate an appraisal. So what I've done is just as a standard operating procedure, when we're registering the file and putting our order sheets together for some of the other documents we need, if it's an FHA file, we order that case number that day. Now, a loan for VA, can you guys see below? Okay, yeah. Okay, so for VA, oops. You need to order a COE. Now, you have to check with your brokerage about whose responsibility this is. At my brokerage, none of my loan officers should be issuing an approval without a COE. My processor knows about this, but any COE, we're small enough that any COEs funnel through me and I order them because we switched to the WebLGY and it's a little bit funky and I just want to make sure, and we've had a couple of issues with some COEs. So right now I pull all COEs as the owner of my company, in part because this is a certificate of eligibility, COE, certificate of eligibility. This is going to tell us what a veteran is eligible for in financing. how in the world are we going to approve a loan if we don't know what they're eligible for? So I would advise you as a processor, good gravy. Hold on a second. All right, sorry about that. I would advise you as a processor, if you are working on a VA loan and you do not have a certificate of eligibility in your file, you push that back to the loan officer until you have one. Unless at your company, it's a responsibility of yours to order it. Okay, that's how important this is. A borrower, refi, or purchase should not even, sorry, I'm disappointing my children from afar, should not even be approved without this. This is equivalent to telling somebody what they can qualify for without knowing how much they get paid. Okay, that's how important this is. So when we're talking about submitting a loan as a best practice, you should have this, COE, okay? Can you submit a loan without it? Absolutely, you can. Okay, does anybody have any questions about this stuff before I start erasing some of it? So you need income, assets, ID, and a submission sheet on every file, no matter what it is, unless it's a streamlined refinance. You have to have this on every file. If it's a purchase, you also need the contract at submission. If it's a refi, you should also have the mortgage statement and any sort of HOA coupon. Okay, no questions? Okay. The next part of this, I'm going to kind of tell you two different ways to process a loan based on your volume. How many loans are you processing? And based on time management on what lender turn times are. So turn times, remember we talked, okay. I'm running two different classes. So I have to say, remember we, because yesterday was a different class. Okay, so a turn time is the amount of time that it takes from, well, some banks, you have to disclose and they disclose for you. So the time it takes to get from submission to underwriting and then underwriting to approval, those are all turn times. If you've ever been in the restaurant and industry and you think turning a table, turning clients, like, hairdressers, I think they say turning their chair, right? How long it takes to get one in and get it out. So this is the turn time. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to talk about I want to talk about it because right now what we have are long turn times. So from the time you submit it in until you get it back, we're in a place right now where these are a little bit longer. So I'm going to give you kind of a best practice when you have longer turn times. When I was a processor, I did two things because I was also a stay-at-home mama, and at the time we have 5 or 6 kids at home because Ada wasn't born yet, or she was big. I don't know. I don't even remember how many kids I had. I had a lot of fucking kids at home, okay? A lot of kids, lots of kids. All the kids were at home. We had 5 or 6 kids at home. A couple of them were in high school, one in middle school, a couple of them, like 3 of them were in diapers at the same time. That's why I don't remember, okay? It was traumatic. All right. So what you need to know is what is your lender's cutoff for a same-day submission? More times than not, that cutoff time is noon of the time zone that bank is in. Noon. Okay. So if I submit the file by noon today, 4/9, then it goes in line stamped that it was submitted today, 4/9. If I submit it afternoon, then it goes in for 4/10. Okay, so if a bank is running a 2-day turn time for initial underwrites, so the initial underwriting, they're running a 2-day turn time. If I submit before noon, then I'm expecting this out for 11. And let's just pretend it's not a weekend. Okay, we're just gonna pretend it's not a weekend on 4/11. Okay. If I submit it afternoon, after 12, then it gets clocked as 4/10, and it's not going to come out till 4/12. Okay, so what I did as a processor was 2 things. I spent my evenings, so like after my kids would go to bed, if I was going to work an hour or 2, I would work on submissions. Because whether I did it that night or before noon the next day, right? So if I did it in the evening of 4/9, it was the same as submitting it before noon on 4/10. Okay, so in the mornings, I would it was kind of like my quiet time, and I would work on getting files submitted. Try and get as many submitted before noon. Okay. If you have long turn times, okay, let me backtrack really quick. As a broker, we work with a lot of different banks, and every bank gets to decide what are their standard operating procedures. Now, I can't blanket statement this because I don't work with all the banks available in wholesale. It's about to get rowdy in here because the kids are over there. We're filming this during Corona. The kids are over there and they're like trying to pass up underneath the door, and it's about to get rowdy. So I apologize. Okay. In my experience with most banks, once you submit the loan, that's your place in line. You can keep adding documents to the file, okay? But you need to double check this for submission. And then most banks, when you submit the conditions, when you come back here, right? When you submit for conditions, if you add something new, you get kicked back in line to the day you added the something new. So as a processor, you need to know these things. You need to know if I upload something and I've already submitted for an initial underwrite, if I upload something else, do I get kicked back in line or do I keep my place in line? Most of the time, you keep your place in line on that initial underwrite. So we, as a practice, when it's long turn times, we try and get the file submitted right away with all the minimum requirements, okay? And then we work on trying to get all the other items in the file. Like for example, there was a time, well, gosh, most of the banks I use are still on 24-hour turn times, but some of the other banks, like if they're on 3 to 4 day turn times, right? You submit the file and then you put your order in for some of these other documents. You want to focus on the ones that are needed for a CD to be issued. If you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. We're going to talk about that next training. Tomorrow in our loan officer training, and then I guess probably Tuesday of next week in the processor training, right? Okay, so in the mornings, I try and work on submissions and get those bad boys in before noon, as many as I can, okay? Now, if you're working with a bank that has a really fast turn time, like UWM or Remen, they're still on same day or 24-hour turn times on that initial underwrite, don't hold the file for missing stuff. Don't hold the file. Just get it submitted with whatever the minimum requirements on so that you can get this approval, okay? The best kind of processors are the ones that have what's called a low touch file, meaning their file doesn't have to go back to underwriting very many times. I will tell you probably like a good average, especially if you're newer, is 4 to 5. I've always worked with clients who have really challenging situations. It's the way that I built my business. And so I have a higher average than most because I work with very challenging credit profiled clients. So I'm expecting to have to go back a couple of times. Okay. But if you have a lender that has a short turn time, just get it in. Okay. Okay. So what do I do as a processor when a loan is in here? It's submitted, but we're waiting for it to come out of underwriting. What do we do? Right here is where we're going to start putting our orders out for what's called third party. Okay. Every file is going to need title work. And insurance. If it's an FHA file, excuse me. If it's an FHA file and your loan officer has not ordered, meaning you got the file and there was no verification of employment in there, you need to order a VOE because all FHA files require a verification of employment. Okay, so you've submitted. Ideally, if you're getting the file here at submission, ideally the loan officer has already done this. If you're getting the file up here, then you need to be ordering this VOE up here and including it in your submission. Okay, because they're gonna verify income and there's lots of different ways to do that and we want that in there. But as a processor, the sooner you can get that ordered, the better. I try and train my loan officers, if you're doing an FHA file, that a verification of employment is as important as a certificate of eligibility, and you really shouldn't be qualifying a FHA borrower without a written verification of employment. But I don't train the world and I don't tell men how to do their job. So I try and teach my lady folks to do this right the first time, the right way. If you're gonna qualify a borrower on an FHA loan, you gotta have a VOE. But just know that you may get FHA files that don't have a VOE in them. Okay? All right. So we're in this process, right? We're gonna put our title work orders in. We're gonna order insurance. You may have to contact the borrower yourself. Say, hey, my name is Jackie. I'm working with Jim. I'm processing your loan. Can you let me know who you'd like to use for insurance? Okay, but you need to kind of work that out with your loan officer. If that's something they want you to contact the borrower about, get into a rhythm with the loan officers you're working with. If you want them to have, you know, like pretty much our loan officers know at this point that if they don't tell us who the insurance provider is, our processors have permission to reach out to the client, introduce themselves as the processor, and let them know that they're just inquiring about who their insurance provider is going to be. Okay, you're going to order the VOEs if you need to, and if you are in charge of ordering appraisals, you're going to order the appraisal here. Now, we operate in our corporate offices in Colorado. We're also licensed in New Mexico and Texas. People often are baffled when I tell them we order it here before clients get through inspection on a purchase or that we order it right away. And I'm going to explain to you why we do that, especially as when we come out of COVID and we're going to be inside of the summer shopping season and the largest demographic of largest generation is in the home buying space and rates are going to be really low. Let me press the importance of this upon you. When you order an appraisal, you're essentially getting in line. Okay, some AMCs, appraisal management companies, will charge the appraisal at the time you order it. Other ones charge it once the inspection is complete. But here's what I tell people. This gets us in a line in an appraiser, for an appraiser. In Colorado, in the non-peak time, appraisals are 7 to 10 days to completion in non-peak circumstances, okay? So what I tell people is we're gonna go ahead and order the appraisal. This is gonna get us in line. If you guys don't pass inspection or do you decide not to move forward, we just cancel it, they refund your money, no harm, no foul. If we'll make sure to put a note in the system that says, you know, inspection date isn't going to be complete until X date, but we also get the notification of when the inspection is going to occur. So if you're a good processor, you're watching those dates, you're managing those dates. You really probably don't want an appraiser out in a property before their inspection resolution deadline, okay? Because we don't know what the inspection is gonna find. Make a note about inspection, please, because I need to ask him. You can cancel an appraisal even after the appraiser has been to a property. Okay, and you get charged a trip fee. I've seen it anywhere between $75 and $150. The only time you cannot refund that appraisal is once the report is completed and turned in. So what you want to try and do, right? So we have all ladies in here. Okay, great. When I'm getting ready for a really busy day, okay, I get the laundry started, I get the dishwasher started, and I put the ring around my toilet stuff with the bleach so it can soak all day. Like, so that the bleach is like soaking on the thing all day, right? So I'm multitasking. I'm trying to put that stuff out to work while I'm doing other stuff that requires my physical presence. So once this is like putting the laundry in the wash, and now it's washing, and now you gotta go and order all this other stuff. So that way when the laundry comes out of the wash, right, you've got all this other stuff coming in, and then you can put everything in the dryer, right? Like, let's say you were washing laundry, but you had a couple of real, you know, delicate type laundry that you washed, and no, actually, that's not a good analogy. Let me think about that. I have to think of a better analogy for that. But anyway, you guys get the point, right? Right? So this is like putting everything in the wash. It's going to go and wash, and then you're going to go and do all this other stuff while this is in the wash, right? You want to try and get all this stuff done. So that way, by the time this gets out of the wash, you can put it in the dryer, fold it, and put it away, and not be in the middle of food prepping. Something like that. Just go with it. Sounds good. Okay. So now, once it comes out of the approval, so it goes into underwriting, the underwriter reviews all the documents that we put in, right? You're going to get an approval sheet, and it's going to list out all your conditions on it. Now, what I did, because I'm a little bit of a control freak, is I would go through the approval, I would forward the email to the loan officer, and I would tell them the things that I needed them to get, because this was my file, bish. It's my file. I need you to get these things from the client, from the borrower, so that I can get my file back into underwriting, right? But if you think of it as their file, you're going to always be asking permission. This is your file. Your job is to get this file from here to here. And if you don't consider it your file, you're going to have a hard time getting here, and you're going to let the loan officer like bowl you over. Oh, I'll get it from them tomorrow. No, I need it by end of business today. Because in the morning, I submit these things so I can get it in before noon so that I can get your loan closed on time. So I need it by end of business today. They need a blinking emoji like this, like, no, I'm serious. Okay. So once you get your approval out, what I do is I figure out what are the things that I need to do and what are the things the loan officer needs to do. So I basically send that off to the loan officer, right? So I put another load in the laundry and go get that working. And then I start working on the rest of the stuff that I need to do. What I know is when I submit it, I might not have had the title work and the insurance yet. but I know that I ordered it because that's a part of my process. So when the approval comes out, I'm going to go, oh, I ordered that when I submitted. Do I have my title work and my insurance in yet? The answer should be yes. The answer should be yes. If it is no, you need to get on the phone and find out where it's at. Because you should have a 24 to 48 hour turn time from when you request this from these providers until it's back to you. And I will tell you, I've had to have conversations with insurance agents that say, Vince, we asked for this a week ago and it's what we need to get the loan submitted. I either need it by end of business today or I need to go back to the client and let them know that we're not able to get this from you and ask them what they would like to do moving forward. I'm a loan officer, so but you might need to say to the loan officer that you're working with, hey, we sent this to Vince Qualteri at State Farm. He hasn't sent it back. It's been a week. I need you to ask the borrower to give Vince a call and get this over to us. I need it by end of business or I need it by tomorrow. Give them a deadline. Okay, because you've already, at that point, you've already spent 3 or 4 days on it. And we can't get a CD issued without that insurance. And that's going to affect your ability to close on time. Okay. All right. So you've submitted the file. It's in the washing machine, washing. While it's washing, you're going to order the title work. You're going to order the insurance. You're going to make sure you have a VOE in the file. If you don't have a VOE in the file, you're going to call the employer and let them know you're trying to do a verification of employment and income for one of their employees working on a home loan. Who is the best contact for that? Going to get the contact, send the request out, and you're going to order the appraisal. So now we're putting all of this stuff in the washing machine, right? We're going to send it out for it to go and work. And what you're hoping for is that all this stuff comes together about the same time as your approval. And you have a really clean approval, and you should really be trying to resubmit within 24 hours. Now, I know different lenders have different requirements on parameters on how many conditions you have to have before you submit, okay? So, because when I was a processor, the bank that I worked with the most was UWM, and they didn't always have the 90% condition rule. They didn't always have that. But when they first were prototyping ease, they asked me to prototype it because I had one of the lowest touch averages of a processor. And so they asked me to prototype the system and let them know where the shortcomings were and why it did or didn't work for a processor, right? So I kind of grew up in the UWM environment, but even before I worked at UWM, I was doing loans this way because, again, I'm a training freak and I would watch all the videos and do all the trainings. And so I learned, and a lot of it too was because I was very insecure. I really didn't feel like I held enough value to even be in the space of real estate. And so the way for me to combat that was I wanted to learn everything. And I taught companies how to use their own system because nobody watched the training videos. Okay, so that's where a lot of my knowledge comes from, is from being in that really insecure space in my life and saying, well, the only way to not be insecure about it is to know how to do it. And in fact, one of the employers that I used to work for, they used to tease me all the time that I was watching all the training videos. Yes, I will. Lily, yes, I will go back over that. Let me just finish one thing really quick and then I'll go back over. Lily asked if I could go back over how I set my day up, submissions before noon. I absolutely will. Okay, so once you send all that stuff out to the wash and it comes in at the same time your approval comes back, then you can kind of check off whether that's digitally or whatever software you have. I'm old school, so to this day, I still print my approvals. I still have a bucket of highlighters. I still highlight my junk. Okay. My processor is a millennial. She does everything in a to-do list on the computer and highlights it in her PDF thing. She's fancy. Okay. And then you really want to try and have that back in 24 hours. Now, sometimes you're not going to be able to get it into 24 hours because people want to take pictures of their money in their safe, or an employer's turn time for verification is 72 hours, right? But that's why you want to get it done here. So there's going to be things that you can't control, but you really want to shoot for getting it back in 24 hours after an approval is released to you. Okay, so is everybody okay with what I have here? Can I erase some of this? Okay, so I'm going to assume that no news is good news. Everybody is okay with it. If you're not okay with it, I need you to unmute yourself and just let me know. Okay. Okay. So you're going to have to set up some parameters for yourself, very similar to the bank does. Okay, so here is my suggestion. This is just my suggestion. If you get a submission from a loan officer, I'm just going to say noon. I'm really bad about taking lunch. I usually take, my kids used to tease me all the time because I'd have an alarm that going off at like 1 o'clock. They'd be like, Mom, it's time for lunch. But if I didn't do that, I never took a break and I never ate. So first of all, take care of yourself. It's very easy to jump into this and be head down in files and not come up for air. Okay, so every day to this day, after 13 years, I have an alarm that goes off at 12:30 and I make myself take a break at 12:30. Sometimes I don't always eat lunch because I'm not hungry, and you know, that's my own stuff. I tell myself I'm intermittent fasting, healthy. But give yourself a break. You have to have a mental break. So I'm going to walk through to this day, even as an originator, as a broker owner, if I'm doing origination and or processing, right, because I'm training a lot of staff, this is how I set up my day, okay? If I get a submission after my lunchtime, so let's say this is Monday. If I get a request to submit after lunchtime, this is going into Tuesday before noon. Because it doesn't matter if I get it in today, it's still not going to be clocked till tomorrow anyway. Now, depending on my workload and how many loans I'm working on, so back in the day when I was processing 32 files, that was a lot because I was taking it really high. Like I was getting it from up here at the application. So, I mean, I was making like almost $700 a file. And that was 5 years ago. That's what I'm saying. If you're taking it from application and you're doing all that stuff, you better damn well be near making like $1,000 a file. Don't tell anybody I told you that. I don't want calls from your broker owners. Okay. But if I'm working late at night, okay, this would be one of those files that might go out at like 9 p.m. if I decide to work an hour or two at night. But anything that comes after lunch isn't going to be marked for today anyway. Okay, so Monday, I'm going to work on submissions until noon. Okay, this is my day. I'm going to work on submissions until noon. And that means whatever it is that I need to get done on that file in order to submit it. And then I'm going to take my break. And afternoon, I'm going to work on subs and then conditions. So I'm going to work on subs in the morning. You might be able to get through all your subs, But if I got a new submission at 9 a.m., I got to try and get that in same day. Like if somebody emails me at 8 or 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, I'm going to try and get that submitted same day. Okay. You might have to say I'm 24 hours on submissions. But the thing that you have to understand is that if you're 24 hours on submissions and the bank is 24 hours on disclosures and then another 2 days before underwriting, your 24 hours puts the loan officer at 4 days before getting an approval. Okay, so I always try and get my subs done in the morning. You may have to push this down, okay? After my break, I'm gonna finish. I'm gonna, try and finish any subs that I got. Oh, sorry, hold on. This is not right. Sorry. I'm gonna do from the day before and then the current day. And then I'm gonna take a break. Sorry, I probably messed you guys up. I'm so sorry, okay? So I'm gonna work on the subs from the day before and then my current day subs before my break. And then when I come back, I'm gonna work on the conditions for my loan approvals. Okay, this is gonna be a hard thing to manage because you have a lot of moving parts, but here's what I will tell you. Try and do a first in, first out. The reason that I tell you that it's hard is because all of our different banks have different turn times. So you may have to decide, depending on how many loan officers you're working for or how many banks you're working with, you may have to prioritize by close date on which files you're going to work on conditions first. You got to find what works for you. Oh, shoot. I don't know how long this person's been waiting, but we're almost over. Oops, I left somebody in the waiting room. Okay. Huh? Yeah, that's fine. I just let somebody in the room. We're actually just about ready to finish up, but I am recording. So I will put this in our YouTube channel. It's going to go in later today and you'll be able to watch it. Now, for me specifically, I send out my request for conditions and I consider my resubmit as a submission because they're time-stamped the same way. So when you send your conditions in, it's time-stamped. So I'm really trying to, when I'm saying I want 24 hours on this, I want to try and get back into submitting this by the morning of the next day, right? Because if it's in the afternoon, it's not going to count for today anyway. It's going to count for tomorrow. But what I want to do is send out all my requests, right? Put all the junk in the washing machine and let it wash. And then tomorrow I'm going to work on my subs. So you might need to break this out for yourself as in new submissions or condition submissions. But if the cutoff is noon, you want to really try to get whatever submissions, new loan submissions or condition submissions done before noon. You guys, this is why a lot of processors and underwriters have quiet time in the morning. Like if you call a lender or you get a bounce back email from an underwriter and it says, thank you for your email, I'm currently working on new submissions, right? Because everybody's trying to keep these turn times. And then for me, myself, from 8 to 9 is power hour. This is where I'm really addressing any files that are like really clear, like really close to closing, they have an issue. What I'm trying to do is send out, again, like send out emails, like let's say I have a question from an underwriter on a condition, or let's say I got a VOE back and it's not complete and I got to send it back to the lender and I need, I need them to put the good through date or they missed a box, right? I want to send these out as early in the day as possible. So that way I can move on to this, right? So when let's say I'm working on the Jones file because I need to submit it, and I know that I'm missing the VOE before I can send it back in, I want to try and send that email out as early in the day as possible. So that way, as I get through the end of my submissions, let's say I'm at the end of my submissions and it's like 11:30, I'm going to go back and be like, hey, did I get that VOE back in? Does that make sense to everybody? Just kind of managing those expectations and structuring your day. Now, we're about 5 minutes over. I'm just going to keep you for a few minutes longer. Some of the things that we do, we keep a blank copy. So like, for example, Remen, they have their own submission sheet and like 3 other forms they want you to submit with every file. So we have those pre-filled out with all of the pertinent broker information, and we save it in a file. And then anytime we submit from Remen, we just open that file, we type in the borrower specific information, and then we do a save as into the borrower folder so that we don't have to type out all the broker information every stinking time that we do a loan there. So if you have a lender, I know Nations Direct does it, Remen does it, 11 Mortgage has their own version of it, but we don't use them anymore because they hose. Belle, who else has submission forms?
Universal. Doesn't Universal have one?
I don't remember. But anyway, you get the point, right? So we have a little folder inside of our shared drive for the lenders, each lender. And so if our processor needs to go in and get the documents, I also have a PDF file called Z required docs. And there are state required documents. And they're already pre-filled out with my information as a loan officer. And we do that. We can do that for every loan officer. So we just go in and grab that and put it in our Colorado files. So we're not having to duplicate that information every single time that we're doing it. I know one of the things that we talked about in a previous class is you don't really necessarily have to have Calyx to mortgage process. You can create reusable Excel forms, which we've got, and I was gonna, we're gonna find a way to best give these out. But where you can go in and put your information in there so that really the only thing you have to do when you're sending these requests is put the client specific information in it, right? Because it's all about efficiency and reducing redundancy, which is something I cannot, y'all, I got 7 kids, I got 4 at home. The thing I hate most is repeating myself or doing something twice. It drives me insane. So the more that I can streamline a process or streamline the paperwork, I'm gonna find a way to do that. Okay, now, any questions? Let's open it up. Let me give you guys a couple minutes to ask some questions. If there's anything you want me to go back over, specific questions, go ahead and everybody take yourself off mute and let me know.
Where do you find your specific lender that you're working with, their submission turn or their turn times, whether it's initial submission or condition submissions?
So most of the lenders post it somewhere on their website. Because of the environment we're in, some of them have chosen to hide that information until you log in. It used to be that it was like, look at how awesome I am. I have 2-day turn times. Come check it out on my website. But now that everybody's like, you know, we just went through this real big push, real big volume time. And so when people's turn times started going up like 3-4 days, they took it off their front page and you could only see it when you logged in. So it's a good question for your account executive so that you can find that information. I would say it's something you should probably check once a week. Probably check once a week. You may have to reprioritize your workload to get files in at banks that have longer turn times. Yo, oh my gosh, you're gonna die. So I was doing this training. Was it yesterday, Isabel, or the day before?
Well, it depends on what you're gonna say.
The turn times for 11.
Oh, that was
Before.
2 days ago.
Yeah. Y'all, so I was trying to show them, like, we were talking about turn times, what it means, right? So I get onto 11 Mortgage's website. I hope I don't get in trouble. I don't want to get in trouble. But anyway, it's on their front page. Screw it. Dude, it said that they were doing setup from 4 days before. They were working on initial underwrites from March 19th and working on conditions from March 25th. You guys, 19-day initial underwrite time? No way. And we were talking, and so I went on to talk about like how rate wasn't maybe necessary. Rate, we always try and accomplish 3 things with loans as an originator. So I'm gonna give you a spiel from an originator side. From an originator, we always try to accomplish 3 things for people: the lowest rate, the lowest payment, and try and let them keep as much cash as possible, right? And I tell people, we're really good. Most of the time we can accomplish 2 of those 3 things, but I will tell you that the rate oftentimes is the least important thing in the deal, unless you're planning on getting a shirt made so you can walk around town telling everybody what kind of rate you got, okay? The reason that 11 Mortgage, and I had an entire pipeline there that I pulled and moved somewhere else, but the reason that they have these long turn times is because their rates were so low. And so everybody submitted there. But you guys, they still haven't made a lot of adjustments to their rates, so their rates are still low. And I think people are submitting without checking what the turn times are and don't realize that they're 19-day turn times. And now they're screwed because they already sold that rate to the client. They've already locked it in. They can't move it, especially nowadays. You can't move it nowadays because rates are not the same, right? And so as a processor, you might have to reprioritize your, I mean, like if I know that universal lending is 4 days in turn time, I might have to prioritize that loan that's going to universal above a loan that's going to UWM. Because I know UWM is going to get it out in 24, 48 hours max. Like I can probably count on one hand how many times UWM has been over 3 days on an initial underwrite. Of course, that's my phone. Okay, so you might have to prioritize your pipeline. If you know that a bank is going to take 3, 4, 5 days to initially underwrite, you got to get that sucker in. And then do all your same orders, order your title, order your insurance, order all that stuff. Because if they're waiting 5 days for that initial underwrite, you can still get that stuff in and clean up the things that you're going to be on an approval. Now, I keep saying that. Let me tell you one more little trick of the trade. Every stinking file. So if you have a long initial turn time, okay, and you're a processor, LOEs and LOX for name variations, credit inquiries, and addresses. Okay, so on the bottom of the credit report, it's going to tell you who they've inquired for credit in the most recent 120 days. We want to send them, depending on who your credit provider is, sometimes it'll automatically PDF generate that for you, Funding Suite does. We want to know of all the times they've applied for credit in the last 120 days, did they obtain any new credit, yes or no? Okay, send that out to the borrower to sign. Name variations, look at the credit report towards the bottom. It's going to tell you what other names are associated with. If it's, a lot of times it's most common for women, you know, like maiden and married. But create a letter of explanation for their name variations and then address. Well, how do you know what addresses an underwriter is going to want to know about? And I will tell you. When the application comes in and there's 2 years of address history, on the credit report, Equifax might say, let's say I've lived at one place for 3 years. And then before that, I rented an apartment. And Equifax says that in 2019, I was associated with this address that was an apartment. So that could be that somebody bought my name as a lead when I lived at the apartment, and they bought it 2 months ago and they sent me something, and now that address is like following me because of that. So I told the underwriter that I've lived here for 3 years, but Equifax says that this address was associated with me last year. So you're going to want to look at any address that's been associated to the borrower on credit that isn't listed on the 1003, and that's going to need a letter of explanation. I would only suggest that you work on these if you have a lender that has a long turn time. Right now, Nations Direct had a really long turn time, and Plaza had a really long turn time right before all the COVID stuff happened. And so this is what I was explaining to Isabel, my processor, like, hey, what are some of the common things that you've seen come out on appraisals, like on every file? Let's work on those. Look at the credit. Let's take some time, right?
Approvals.
And that would be one thing.
Appraisals.
What's that?
That comes out on approvals. You said appraisals.
Oh yeah, approvals. I do that a lot. I misspeak. Okay. So if you're just joining us, just know that we're getting ready to wrap up. I will post the YouTube on my channel, and I'll make sure that the link is available. I know a lot of people are wanting to watch these kind of like in their downtime at night. Okay. Any other questions? All right. Then that's what I have for you today. Next time, what we're going to do is, where's my list? What did I have my list. But next time, what we're going to talk about a little bit more in depth is how do you work towards becoming a third-party processor and make those big dollars? Okay. So before I became an originator, I was a third-party processor. I worked for about 7 loan officers at different companies. I had my own company. I had my NMLS. And so I want to walk you through what does that look like, or how do you move up? If you haven't been in one of my other videos, I was talking about like you basically have a junior processor, and you have like a level 2 processor, and then you have a TPP or like an LOA, right? Where you're really taking over so much of the file. Okay, so again, if you're just joining us, just know that we're wrapping up, and I'll be posting the YouTube video to this training in our YouTube channel. We finally got it verified, so we can post videos longer than 15